Listen carefully, because once you step into these words there is no clean return to innocence. How many times have you been betrayed? How many times did you swear you would learn from the blow, only to fall again into the same clumsy faith in men and in the so-called justice of the world? They believed exile would break me, that torture would tame my mind, that abandonment would turn me into a blurred memory pushed to the margins of history, but they failed to understand one essential truth: pain does not destroy the one who knows how to look. Pain awakens. I was dragged from my bed before dawn, bound like a beast, beaten until dignity became just another hollow word, then thrown into nothingness like human waste, and while most would have begged for mercy or rotted away pleading for comfort, I chose something different. I observed. Every humiliation taught me how real power operates, every betrayal became a masterclass on human nature, and every scar opened a new eye inside me. I understood then that one does not rule from comfort or kindness, one rules from the cold clarity born when everything you loved is ripped away without warning. Do not imagine me as a scholar sheltered by ancient codices or gentle philosophies. Imagine a man alone on a farm outside Florence, sleeping on frozen ground while listening from afar to the life that had been stolen from him, dissecting those who destroyed me, the Medici with their masks of mercy and iron hands, dissecting their psychology as a surgeon dissects a body. What drives a man to betray? Why does ambition always eclipse loyalty? What makes some rule while others obey without ever understanding why? There I discovered something few dare to accept: the one who studies pain lives as a victim. But the one who studies power is reborn indestructible. I did not write The Prince to comfort broken souls. It was designed as a mental fortress, an architecture of inner warfare for those who have been betrayed enough times to stop believing in moral fairy tales. This world does not forgive innocence. It punishes it. Life will try to shatter you, your enemies will seek to bend you, and when you least expect it, even those you called friends will turn their backs on you, and then a decisive moment arrives, when you must choose, learn from suffering, or remain its victim. I chose to forge myself into a weapon. And now you stand before that same threshold. If you are ready to stop seeing your pain as a curse and begin using it as fuel for your own transformation, seal this first pact by writing a single word: fortress. Exile was proclaimed my tomb, but I refused to die there. I turned banishment into a laboratory. Every frozen night became a session of psychological analysis of humanity. Every ignored letter confirmed one truth: men do not value you for what you give, but for the strength you radiate when you stop begging. I learned that suffering is a secret school reserved for those who can endure looking at themselves without illusions, because pain reveals invisible patterns: who runs when power fades, who smiles while sharpening the dagger, who stays only while extracting benefit, and those patterns are the true blueprints of dominion. From that inner abyss I saw what few dare to face: power is not built on morality, but on radical understanding of human nature. It is not kindness that binds men together, but the calculation of advantage, the fear of losing, and the hunger to gain. From this understanding was born the mental architecture I would later cast into my writings, not as theory, but as distilled humiliation, betrayal, and relentless observation, a manual for those who no longer wish merely to survive, but to command their own destiny. Because the great lie is believing the world is just or balanced. It is not, it never has been. It is a chessboard where victory belongs to those who understand that pity without power is a sentence of weakness, that loyalty without strength is childish illusion, that loving more than you impose only makes you prey. I accepted that truth without filters to become something dangerous, a man who no longer deceives himself about how power truly works. And listen to this carefully: if you are here, it is no accident. Something inside you has begun to tire of losing, of trusting too much, of carrying disappointments without turning them into wisdom. This is the precise point where transformation begins, not on the surface, but in the deepest darkness of human understanding. Block 1: Fortune and Chaos. I was never naive enough to believe that life is a sequence of innocent coincidences. That is a lie men repeat to avoid facing their own cowardice. They call misfortune bad luck so they can excuse themselves for failing to see the storm approaching. They name chaos as chance so they can sleep peacefully without admitting they never built real defenses. I saw it with my own eyes in Florence: merchants intoxicated by seasons of prosperity, laughing while dismissing warnings, trusting in fragile contracts and paper alliances. Until the river of reality arrived without notice and swallowed their fleets, crushed their fortunes, and left them begging. Nobles who swore eternal friendship collapsed when a well-placed rumor dismantled years of relationships. Princes crowned in gold turned into outcasts within months because they failed to foresee that fortune is not luck, it is a brutal force that strikes exactly when it senses complacency. I understood then that fortune does not behave like a capricious goddess. It behaves like a predator, It smells weakness, detects insufficient preparation, waits for neglect, and strikes. Listen to this without filters. No one falls by accident. They fall because they left gaps in their defenses while believing calm would last forever. Every betrayal you suffered, every plan that collapsed without warning, every project that died at the final stretch, it was not bad luck. It was fortune finding the poorly sealed point in your structure. Most people believe chaos cannot be anticipated, and that belief is the first chain that keeps them defenseless. I came to understand something else. Fortune is violent but predictable, like a river that never stops overflowing. It only waits for the place where the dam is poorly built. And the one who is swept away swears it was sudden, when in truth he ignored every signal warning him, the ally who grew distant before betraying you. The partner who began doubting before abandoning you. The lover who stopped looking at you before disappearing. All disasters announce their arrival. The powerful man does not pray for the storm to never come, he builds dams to command it when it does. I learned the most brutal lesson of all: fortune controls only half of your existence. The other half depends on your virtue, not the virtue preached in Sunday sermons or the naive goodness celebrated by the weak, but real virtue, ruthless will, the capacity to impose order when the world falls into chaos, to anticipate patterns, to prepare scenarios before they erupt, to strike precisely when the tide exposes its unguarded flank. In Florence I saw men praying while water flooded through their doors. And I saw others digging channels, redirecting currents, sacrificing possessions to save greater structures. The weak beg for mercy. The strategist reshapes the terrain. Fortune does not respect pity, it respects audacity. It never rewards the one who waits, never favors the one who hesitates. It grants advantage only to the one who moves when the others are still trembling. And now I must be ruthless with you. If your misfortunes keep repeating, it isn't bad luck, it's lack of strategy. The relationship that exploded had invisible cracks you ignored out of emotional need. The friend who sold you out had already begun to despise you when he saw you weaken. The opportunity you lost was not sealed by destiny, it was poorly defended by indecision. Ruin never arrives suddenly, it is slow cooked on a foundation of illusions and delays. Fortune always observes, measures, calculates. And when it detects passivity, it strikes with surgical precision. I watched men stronger, wealthier, and more influential than you collapse because they believed they could fall asleep in the shade of temporary success. No one can. So I ask you without anesthesia. While life is calm, what are you building? Walls of hollow faith hoping nothing collapses? Or dams of discipline and foresight to tame chaos when it arrives? Do you still pray for security like the weak? Or have you finally understood that the only real security is forged through absolute control of your mental preparation? Because fortune never warns twice, it strikes the moment it senses you have stopped watching. And only those who dared to act before chaos erupted succeeded in bending the river, while the rest were swallowed by their own complacency. Block 2, The Theater of Appearances. I was never naive enough to believe that men seek truth. Men seek what they want to see, not what is. I learned this not from books, but by walking the corridors of Florence's palaces, watching mediocrity rise not through real virtue but through flawless construction of public image. Hollow men elevated as heroes because they knew how to smile at the right moment, bow to the right power, and speak the words the crowd longed to hear. I saw rulers pose as merciful while signing blood-stained edicts in private. I saw merchants kneel in temples each morning and cheat without shame before nightfall. I saw nobles proclaim themselves defenders of justice while conspiring to crush weaker allies. And then I grasped the equation that governs the world. Men are not judged for what they do, but for what they appear to be. Truth is irrelevant when the stage is well lit. As Secretary of the Republic, I learned the bitter necessity of mastering the mask. I despised many of the men to whom I carried messages, yet I never allowed it to show. Had even a flicker of contempt surfaced in my gaze, they would have crushed me without hesitation. I learned to perform humility while calculating, loyalty while anticipating betrayal, cordiality while reading hidden ambition in the language of gestures. This was not hypocrisy, it was tactile survival, constant surgery upon one's own behavior to adapt to terrain ruled by appearances. For the man who presents himself unmasked is devoured by those who wear masks. Absolute sincerity is not virtue. It is exposed vulnerability in a world ruled by emotional predators. I came to understand that there are 5 sacred masks every aspirant to power must learn to wear as flexible armor: mercy, loyalty, honor, justice, and religiosity. Not to be them, that would be suicidal, but to appear as them when it is useful. Whoever attempts to embody these virtues at all times is crushed by those who display them only as strategic instruments. The fox devours the lamb precisely because the lamb believes the world is moral, while it is in fact opportunistic. The key is not to betray ceaselessly or to behave with constant cruelty, but to wield perception as a weapon, to sustain the proper image according to the scene, to alter the facade as quickly as battlefield conditions change. Because the crowd does not analyze, it assumes. Show calm, and they call you wise. Show generosity, and they name you just. Show firmness, and they see a leader. No one asks what burns inside while you project serenity. No one investigates the anguish hidden beneath a trained smile. I learned that people need illusions to survive, they are too busy enduring life to search for uncomfortable truths. And so the human theater thrives, and those who know how to sculpt their character rule without issuing a single shouted command. Real power is born when what others believe about you weighs more than what you truly are. Yet this manipulation obeys one law: the mask must change with the moment. At times mercy, at times severity, at times public loyalty, at times private strategy, at times visible piety, silent cruelty. I watched many men fall not for acting harshly, but for acting the same way always. They became predictable. And predictability is a death sentence in politics, in relationships, in every arena where interests collide. The man who always forgives is trampled. The one who always punishes invites conspiracies. The one who always smiles inspires contempt. The one who always snarls provokes rebellion. Only the man who changes faces preserves control. The mask is movement, the fixed face is a target. I understood that reputation becomes the strategist's sharpest blade. You need not attack if everyone already believes you are dangerous. You need not justify yourself if everyone assumes your innocence. You need not explain anything if mystery precedes you. The man who controls what others believe controls what others do. And when some unwary soul eventually uncovers the fiction behind the facade, it is almost always too late. The moves have already been played, the alliance is sealed, the enemy's isolated. Truth is discovered only after the board already belongs to the one who engineered the illusion. Thus I confirm the most brutal verdict of all: perception is the true political, emotional, and social reality. It is not the man who is right who rules, it is the man who commands the gaze of others. The conscious simulator always outpaces the naive transparent soul. The mask is no petty deception, it is the invisible architecture of control. And while some waste their lives trying to prove who they really are, true strategists shape who they are perceived to be. That is the difference between merely existing and governing. Block 3, The Lion and the Fox. There has never been a truly powerful man who depended on a single nature. I learned this watching political corpses stack one upon another in the palaces of Italy, strong men who believed brute force was enough, and clever schemers without muscle who thought wit alone could replace real power. All of them fell. I watched them fall. I saw generals charge like bulls, convinced of their invulnerability because they commanded armies, blind to the traps closing behind them while they roared forward toward inevitable defeat. I also saw brilliant intriguers, sharp tongues and swift minds, capable of weaving conspiracies with surgical precision, who collapsed at the first blow of open violence because they lacked the strength to endure direct confrontation. None survived. History belongs neither to the strong nor to the intelligent alone, it belongs to the ruthless hybrids who know when to be a beast and when to become a shadow. I learned that the lion imposes immediate respect, naked force, brutal decisiveness, raw psychological impact. When rage erupts, when rebellion rises, when the enemy no longer hides but charges head-on, only the roar stops the avalanche. I saw it in Cesare Borgia when he crushed conspiracies without bargaining for a single unnecessary day. He struck once, without warning, without hesitation, and the city absorbed the message into its skin: indecision was dead. The lion does not persuade, the lion intimidates. And intimidation prevents 1,000 future conflicts. Yet the lion carries a terminal weakness: he is direct, visible, predictable in his advance. He does not suspect what he cannot see. While he roars forward, he never notices the knives approaching from behind. I watched too many leaders fall because they never guarded the flank, convinced that those who trembled before them would never dare to strike them. The lion falls the moment he believes fear guarantees loyalty. That is why the fox must be born. The fox does not impose, he anticipates. He sees the trap before it closes, detects betrayal in a single twitch of the eye, weighs silences, measures glances, interprets what remains unsaid. In Rome I watched cardinals smiling over tables heavy with wine while constructing political ruin beneath every toast, and only those with the mind of a fox left those dinners unscathed. The fox understands that power rarely arrives as open threat, it comes wrapped in promises, flattery, smiling pacts, and counterfeit loyalty. He who does not know how to become a fox mistakes courtesy for ambush, friendship for calculation, assistance for engineer dependence. But the fox, too, is fragile. He can see the trap, yet cannot break it with words. He can evade a blow once, but cannot withstand a frontal assault without the backing of real force. There I grasped the definitive equation of dominion. The strategist must fuse both natures into a single mind. Be a lion without ceasing to be fox. Strike when it serves you, vanish when it is necessary. Advance when the enemy has revealed his position, retreat when the threat remains hidden. Ordinary men fail because they confine themselves to one pattern, always aggressive or always cautious, always trusting or always paranoid, always showing the same face to the world. That consistency renders them readable. And everything that can be read can be anticipated, everything that can be anticipated can be destroyed. Predictability is a death sentence spread across time. I built my thinking around strategic mutation, transforming faster than others can calculate me. Never allowing anyone to know what my next action would be. Today magnanimous. Tomorrow ruthless. Now loyal. Next distant. Always 2 emotional steps ahead, repeating no patterns, offering no easy coherence to interpret. Because when every reaction becomes a mirror of the moment, those who attempt to manipulate you lose their frame of reference. They cannot predict your answer. They cannot direct the script. They move blindly, while you already walk with the entire board inside your mind. True power is not having a single form, it is ensuring that no one can pin down yours. You are lion in the presence of weakness, you are fox in the face of danger. You roar when violence is necessary, you disappear when diplomacy becomes a trap. This is the art that separates ruler from ruled, hunter from prey, never being the same man twice in front of the same enemy. For he who cannot be deciphered cannot be dominated. Block 4, Cruelty well used. Men fear the word cruelty because they confuse it with mindless barbarism, with pleasure and suffering, with chaos. But I learned, watching it carried out upon real bodies and shattered destinies, that cruelty is not an unleashed beast, but a scalpel. It cuts once, with perfect precision, to save the entire organism from collapse. I witnessed this in Cesare Borgia, heir to a land infested with betrayal, warring clans, and constant violence. Any soft ruler attempting to negotiate peace among predators would have been devoured within weeks. Borgia chose differently. He delegated brutality to Ramiro de Orco, granting him unrestricted authority unburdened by moral restraints, and allowed terror to cleanse the terrain. Heads fell. Conspiracies dissolved. Towns trembled beneath the new order. And once stability was secured, Borgia did not hesitate. He executed de Orco publicly, mutilated as the perfect symbol. In a single act he achieved all outcomes at once. Terror had completed its purpose, the people felt relief at seeing the executioner punished. Borgia emerged as just, and future governors learned that violence would not be tolerated beyond its precise mandate. That was cruelty well used, swift, total, and final, never repeated into exhaustion. Most men practice the opposite, and therefore fail. They threaten without acting. They punish timidly. They grant second chances to those who have already revealed their treachery. They reprimand without real consequence. They leave wounds open so as not to seem harsh. This is the most stupid form of cruelty ever conceived, hesitant cruelty, prolonged, uncertain, unresolved. Every incomplete punishment communicates weakness. Every unexecuted warning teaches others they may cross your line again. Every unearned forgiveness invites repetition of the attack. Slowly, the leader bleeds out through dozens of petty rebellions that should never have existed. Traitors gain time, enemies test boundaries, allies lose respect. Power erodes not from excessive severity, but from the inability to be final. I learned that violence, when it is necessary, must strike like lightning, not like drizzle. Lightning leaves one corpse and 1,000 warnings. Drizzle only dampens and never cleanses. A single decisive act prevents hundreds of future challenges. A red line etched with symbolic blood creates lasting order. The human mind learns by example rather than discourse. It is not the threat that educates but the visible consequence. I saw rulers destroyed because they wished to appear noble when they should have been feared, because they chose immediate moral reputation instead of long-term strategic stability. They failed to grasp that misplaced mercy is more cruel than any direct blow. It prolongs conflict, nourishes treachery, and ultimately claims far more lives and devastations than one terminal intervention ever would. Cruelty well used is not rage, it is cold calculation. It is applied once with surgical brutality and withdrawn forever, leaving peace behind. Cruelty misused is emotional, born of anger, repeated without order, driven by the hunger to humiliate or discharge frustration, and it transforms the leader into an uncontrolled tyrant hated by all and perpetually vulnerable to conspiracies. Between these two forms lies an abyss, and within that abyss rest the remains of 1,000 failed rulers. I learned to distinguish them early. When the blow seeks not destruction but stabilization, it is power. When it seeks to satisfy the ego, it is suicide. This principle governs not only thrones, it governs intimate life as well. Every personal boundary violated without consequence summons a larger invasion. Every emotional betrayal tolerated in the name of compassion breeds silent contempt. Every humiliation forgiven without correction trains the aggressor to repeat it. The human psyche mirrors the political chessboard. Whoever fails to establish enforceable limits becomes an exploitable resource. And nothing is respected that can be extracted from without cost. Enduring injustice does not prove nobility, it proves devaluation. And devaluation invites more attacks than strength ever will. Therefore I establish this final law of strategic cruelty: if you decide to cut, cut cleanly. Leave no loose cords. Offer no ambiguous signals. Utter no warnings you are unwilling to execute. A single, total, precise strike saves more relationships, more realms, and more souls than 1,000 conciliatory conversations ever could. Because when men understand that transgression carries an automatic price, chaos withdraws on its own. Balance rises without further violence. And the leader, or the man who governs his own life, ceases to be a target and becomes an unbreakable structure. Block 5, Human Nature as Code. I learned too early a truth that no one teaches without shattering illusions. Human beings do not move by nobility, they move by convenience, and whoever builds their strategy on the hope of spontaneous goodness will end up devoured by constant disappointment. I did not discover this in books or theories, I discovered it by observing the tables of Florence, where oaths were signed with steady hands at noon and betrayed in whispers before the wine cooled at dusk. I saw allies swear eternal loyalty while their eyes already calculated the price of the next change of sides. I saw ministers kiss foreign shields today only to arrange the downfall of those same men tomorrow, and I saw crowds worship those who promised protection, only to abandon them the moment the tide turned against them, for I understood that gratitude is not a stable virtue but a fleeting emotion, that loyalty is not born from affection but from sustained interest, and that a spoken word loses all weight when no consequences exist to uphold it. Most people resist accepting this truth because it is too uncomfortable. They prefer to believe that people change, when in reality people merely obey whichever circumstance benefits them most at any given moment. That childish illusion builds empires of sand ready to collapse at the first breath of crisis. I watched the pattern repeat without exception: the indebted man who vowed to repay every coin until the chance to flee appeared, the protected servant who blessed your name while he could use you and denied you the moment your power weakened, the friend who shared your table today and conspired with your enemies tomorrow to safeguard his comfort, all obeying the same invisible code: survival, advantage, adaptation. It is not conscious malice that governs the average man, it is a basic algorithm programmed to prioritize immediate benefit over any moral banner publicly displayed. That was when I understood that designing your life on the assumption that others will act from elevated principles is the highest form of strategic naivete, a refined kind of social suicide, because the one who expects selfless goodness remains defenseless before those who understand how real human psychology functions. That is why I wrote without hesitation that it is better to be feared than loved when one cannot be both, not from hunger for cruelty but from mathematical lucidity. Love depends on the emotional state of others, gratitude evaporates with time, but respect sustained by consequence becomes a solid constant. Men betray feelings, betray promises, betray shared history. But they do not challenge what may cost them security, position, or survival. Fear creates no affection, but it creates boundaries, and boundaries preserve order far more reliably than embraces ever will. Understanding this code freed me from perpetual disappointment. I stopped demanding that people behave in ways they never would and began designing relationships in which mutual benefit outweighed the temptation to betray, where disloyalty became more costly than cooperation, where keeping one's word proved more profitable than lying. I did not offer favors without structure, I offered clear exchanges. I did not grant concessions without consequence, I established rules. I did not base alliances on blind trust, I built them on aligned interests. When a man understands human nature as it is, not as he wishes it to be, he ceases to be prey to sentimental illusions and becomes an architect of stability, because he no longer relies on fragile expectations but on systems that govern behavior even when emotion falters. This is the point where many retreat, accepting that human beings are selfish at the root demands the sacrifice of comforting fantasies, yet without that sacrifice real power is never attained. He who insists on living in hope of universal nobility dies frustrated, he who designs from the truth of human ego thrives invulnerable. I ceased taking betrayal personally when I understood it as part of the code. I realized these were not attacks against me but predictable responses to poorly calculated incentives. Every betrayal I suffered was no longer a surprise, it became a lesson in social engineering that taught me to seal gaps and reinforce systems so the next betrayal could not occur in the same way. And thus I absorbed one of the darkest, yet most potent, laws of dominion: do not try to change human nature, use it. Do not lament that men are not virtuous, construct scenarios where their selfishness works for you, where their hunger for advantage binds them to your structure without them even perceiving the invisible cage they have accepted to inhabit. When you design from psychological truth, others act in your favor believing they pursue their own interest, and that is power in its purest form. You need not impose control when you build systems in which people obey while thinking they chose to do so. This block is the threshold. Here innocence finally shatters. After understanding this, the world is no longer viewed through sentimental eyes but through the vision of a strategist. Betrayal ceases to hurt because it ceases to surprise, pacts become mental contracts rather than emotional promises, relationships are filtered through their internal architecture rather than their public speech. And once you accept this as the true code of human behavior, cheap affection, hollow promises, and conditional loyalty lose their power to manipulate you. From that moment on, you are no longer the one who trusts. You are the one who designs. Block 6, Turning Pain into Tactical Intelligence. For years I watched men waste pain the way one pours liquid gold onto the soil without understanding its value, cursing their wounds, seeking emotional anesthesia, fleeing into cheap distractions, convinced that suffering is an unfair punishment that must be avoided at any cost, when in fact pain is the rawest form of strategic information that exists. I understood this in the dungeons of Florence, bound to the rack, my muscles tearing beneath the ropes and my bones vibrating like strings pulled to their breaking point, while guards believed they were shattering my body, unaware they were forging my mind. Each increase in pressure taught me the rhythm of human violence, each pause revealed how power doses fear to maintain control, each glance from the torturer exposed the psychological fractures behind his brutality, and while my flesh endured, I observed, memorized, studied, transforming every instant of torment into a practical lesson on how a man's will is dominated, terrified, and broken. Exile prolonged that invisible laboratory. Every unanswered letter, every closed door, every vanished greeting after I lost my rank was not mere personal rejection, it became a map of how the cycle of interest-driven loyalty truly functions, because abandonment is not born of conscious cruelty but of recalculated convenience. I watched those who once knelt before me treat me as a stranger, not because I had changed, but because my usefulness had declined, and in that shift I learned what no book ever teaches: generosity without backing breeds contempt, kindness without power creates abandonment, and loyalty without consequences is an empty symbol. Each betrayal traced a pattern, each silence marked a blind spot, each broken promise revealed where I had placed trust without structure. I came to understand that pain is not meant to be mourned, it is meant to be interrogated like a prisoner. Where was the failure? Which warning did I ignore? Which mask did I mistake for a face? Which relationship relied on emotion rather than shared interest? Many men repeat the same failure like prisoners spinning in circles within a mental cell, calling it bad luck, cruel destiny, or the conspiracy of others, refusing to extract intelligence from their wounds. They trust blindly again, expose themselves again, bet on empty words again, and when they fall once more, they are shocked as if the blow were new, blind to the fact that the pattern is identical. I observe the difference between fools and strategists. The foolish feel pain but never analyze it. They turn it into endless lament, gathering scars without wisdom. Strategists do the opposite, they reduce emotion to the minimum necessary to survive and extract tactical intelligence from every setback, converting each defeat into a system adjustment that prevents the same wound from reopening along the same flank. Every processed injury becomes a layer of internal armor, every deciphered betrayal transforms into an early warning signal, every understood humiliation becomes a cold pulse that guards against future excesses of trust. Thus my internal protocol was born, not to feel pain, but to decode it. When someone fails you after receiving your help, do not mourn ingratitude, record that generosity without power breeds parasites. When an ally becomes an enemy, do not grieve betrayal, learn that loyalty survives only while interests remain aligned. When you lose an opportunity through hesitation, do not lash yourself, register that indecision is a hidden form of self-sabotage. When someone attacks, exploiting your excess mercy, do not blame yourself, understand that mercy without limits is an invitation to abuse. Every experience must become a tactical module reinforcing your mental architecture, because unused pain destroys you, but processed pain forges you into a strategist. In the end, I understood that the difference between the man who is struck again and again by the same blows and the one who becomes untouchable is not luck, intelligence, or talent. It is the ability to turn wounds into maps of internal warfare. True power is not born from avoiding suffering, but from mastering it as superior intelligence. Where the common man sees injustice, the strategist sees coordinates. Where others collapse emotionally, he rebuilds systems. Where the weak seek comfort, he sharpens perception. For every scar is tuition already paid, and wasting the lesson is the only true failure. When I grasped this, I stopped fearing pain as a threat and began using it as a tool, not to harden the heart into empty cruelty, but to sharpen the mind until every past wound became a future advantage. Here are 2 more psychology videos that will grant you an elite level of psychological and Machiavellian power. Go watch them.